I am Jelani Delisa Abdullah Khalfani Bey. I serve as National Grand Sheikh, Divine Minister of the Moorish Holy Temple of Science of the World, Free and Sundry Moorish Science Temple of America.
I'm Assistant National Grand Akeem Bey. Um, and yeah, that's it.
So, first question: Can you explain the significance of teachings of Prophet Noble Ali within the Moorish American movement? Prophet Noble Ali, and this is like kind of my specialty. Prophet Noble Ali gave the solution to the Negro problem. He gave the solution by way of not only Moorish government but religious government. He realized that religion, being the highest type of law in the land, and the legislation of the United States and the U.S. Constitution, which puts a high level of reverence on religious jurisdictions. So, what he did was combine nationality and divine creed. That way, through the religion, you couldn't deny somebody's nationality because the nationality is part of the religion. A lot of people don't understand that they get confused with dogma and not understanding that religions of the world are different types of law. And every society has their own religion and their own law. And that's what they base their code of law from, their religion or the laws of their God.
Um, what I would say is the significant. What was the question again?
What is the significance of the teachings of Prophet Noble Ali within the Moorish American movement?
So it's like twofold. Part of the significance is for the Negro problem, right? Because like National Grand was saying, our people don't have a nationality. You know what I'm saying? Like if we don't understand the concept of nationality, we're never going to get out of the situation that we in right now. For the Moors that's already in the movement, like the National Grand said, we have our own government. Like we have our own laws. We've been empowered to make and enforce our own laws. So what that means essentially is we free. We just don't know it. And the significance behind that is that once we understand this concept and we start doing what the prophet instructed, then this empire that the Moors always talking about, then we can have that. You know what I'm saying?
What's the schism behind the religious aspect of Moorish holy or Moors generally kind of doing away with that teaching of Noble Ali, understanding that the religious aspect, the old time religion, is the most important piece of this whole outfit, so to say, or movement? Well, unfortunately, in one word, it's a conspiracy. Um, the powers that be have planted people in the movement, in the temple as well as the national movements, to make our people look at religion as something that divides the people. When religion doesn't divide the people, it's dogma that divides the people. And more specifically, it's Christianity that divides the people. In ancient times, you had people who practiced the teachings of Yeshua, or we call Brother Justice, and there was no pressure to be a Morisco or Christian. As a matter of fact, when we ruled Al Andalus or Spain, when the Moors invaded Spain, there was no religious requirements. The Moors didn't come into Spain and request them or require them to be Muslims. They honored their religion. They honored their creeds. You know, the Moors, the Islamic Moors or the Mujahids, they were more of the warriors and they took care of the security of the society. Whereas in the Moabites or the Jews, they were more of the commerce. See, so everybody had their lane, and everybody was respected as long as you obeyed the laws of that land. That was the only requirement.
What was the question again, bro?
The question was, how significant is the religious aspect of this movement,
Okay.
and how what's the major role, and why, or I should say, why is important to have the religious aspect in this movement?
So I would say it's very important because so Moors like to talk about a government and everything, but it's like the religious aspect teaches us the principles on how to govern ourselves. So if you don't learn the principles on how to govern your lower self, then how you gonna govern a group of people? So the religious aspect is needed for self development. It's not just about coming into a situation and you know like it's like us being free and having our own government is like giving us keys to a Ferrari or a Formula One car. If you don't know how to drive it, you ain't got no training, you're gonna crash. And we've been crashing and burning since the prophet left. Everybody has understanding on government, nationality, uh, international law, all this stuff on the divine side, but nobody has the understanding on the religious side. Hence, part of the reason why Moors can't stand a religious debate with a Christian, with a Muslim, with a Jew. I've seen Moors debate Muslims and Hebrew Israelites and get tore up because they have no foundation in the religious aspect. And when you do have the foundation in the religious aspect as a Moor, you can you can reconcile Christianity, Islam, and Judaism because that's what we are. We are those Hebrews. We are those Muslims. We are connected to Brother Yahshua. You know what I'm saying? Like we returned the church and Christianity back to European, but we didn't return Jesus to them. So his teachings we still retain. We don't celebrate Christmas, Easter, and partake in their traditions and stuff like that. But the teachings that's in the Bible, that's in the Injil, that's in the New Testament of Jesus, we hold on to those. You know what I'm saying? We teach them to our members. We teach them for ourselves. And we use that standard and that foundation to be able to take us into the national arena and be able to take our seat amongst the affairs of men and be able to stand with integrity and some morality. So
Can you speak more on the side of Moors pushing for like the national sovereignty of Moorish Americans as opposed to the religious aspect of it? Can you speak more to that? And what are the subtle differences and why nationality or the national sides, or Moors generally call themselves Moorish nationals, right? Can you kind of mend that too, and because obviously you have the civics, obviously you have the religious side, but can you kind of bring that together?
for sure. So I mean, it's like what the national tell us. Like, it's no separation between our faith and our politics. Our creed and our national. So it's a divine international movement for a reason. So it's just like we was talking about. More's focus more on the national side, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but we don't see how it's interconnected. So, for example, Moore's trying to start up a monarchy. You got Moore's groups that got presidents and stuff like that. And as a people, and we supposed to be returning to the ways of our foremothers and forefathers, we never had those type of governments. We always had what? Theocracies. So the prophet established a theocracy for us whereby our religious tenets govern our policies and our politics and our national leanings. So there's no separation. The fact that Moors focus on that is part of the problem because what they get caught up in is secularism, secular politics. So you see Moors enforcing the United States Constitution, the United Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, none of which has to do with Moorish Americans. None of which is going to protect the Moorish American. We got our own constitution and bylaws. You know what I'm saying? And in those acts, you have your tenets of your creed, the religion. And based on those religious acts and tenets, then we create the laws that govern our society. So there's no separation. Moors want to be so much a part of the United States and what the European doing. We can't focus on ourselves.
And see, there was a part, there was a point in time that what the Moors were teaching wasn't working in the courtrooms. So they started grasping for straws, throwing the noodles against the wall and see what sticks. So, and then came in, the redemption manual and things of this nature, because they lacked religious law. See what I mean? So with the national side, they ran out of arguments. Mentioning the Zodiac Constitution was unintelligible to the state courts, and they would dub them frivolous, and cases would get thrown out. The U.S. Constitution doesn't apply because, we were taught by elders that, we are the ones who constructed the Constitution and this thing, that thing. But what we forget is our high school civics, where they taught us that the immigrants, the Europeans, adopted and framed that document. So once they adopted it, it became theirs. Noble Ali understood that. And that's why he gave us a divine constitution and bylaws, additional laws, one-on-one questionnaire, our Moorish Holy Quran that has our religious instructions, and doctrine. And what we don't understand is that those doctrines is our law. And there is no other law. Sticking to those guns become your protection. But what Moors have done, because they were not properly taught to give those religious arguments, they went to the same arguments that the Passia Comitatus uses, not understanding that the Passia Comitatus, or the European sovereign citizens, are in their proper person. Their names match their nationality. See what I mean? So as a person whose name matches their nationality, because of that adoption, they have constitutional protection. This is one of the either by ignorance or conspiracy. You have brothers named David McGillicuddy Bay, and John Watkins Ill. But that declaration is an oxymoron, because worldwide, you can't have a European name and a Moorish suffix or Moorish title of nobility. Two things. On the Afrocentric side, a guy named Olifi Asante of Afrocentricity, he tells the story that he did a lecture in Africa. He had a European name. So he's sitting in the audience waiting for the show to start. Finally, he asked one of the brothers, say, "Hey, look, when's everything going to start?" They said, "Well, we're waiting on the keynote speaker." He said, "Well, I've been sitting here for an hour and 15 minutes. He said, "Oh, I'm sorry. We thought he was a European because of the name." See, because in Africa, names are so specific that just by knowing your family name, they know where you're from geographically in Al-Kibulan. If your name is Kalfani, well, you're from Tunisia. No, it's in East Africa. You know what I'm talking about? Afari, Ghana. You see what I mean? Just by hearing the family name, they know where you're from on the continent. That's the significance of names. See, so we strayed away from that. When the prophet ordered that we must proclaim our free national descent name, that strictly means descent means from the bloodline, from the generations. So what he was saying was, you must proclaim the names that your ancient forefathers carried. Abubakar, Abdullah, Ramadan ibn Wati, you know, and understanding that everybody in the world understands these principles. This is what the prophet meant when he said clinging to names and principles that allude to slavery. See what I mean? Then you have another example where one of our elders that passed, Yusuf Rami Bey, as the East Coast Regional Commander for the Great Seal National Association of Moorish Affairs, I had to go to Sumter, South Carolina, and get my marching orders for that month. And he told me the story when he worked in Queens at the school system. I forget which PS he worked at, but he says that a Turkish man came to the school to visit. And he was like a hall monitor security type dude. He would wear his fez to work and everything. At that time, his name was Joseph Archer Bey. So the Turkish man looked at the name tag and says, "Is this your name?" So this cannot be. This is incorrect. Because you can't now be Christian and Moor at the same time. He said after that moment, he turned Joseph into Yusuf and Archer into Rami and kept the Bey. And his brother Idris Rami Bey followed suit. Yusuf and Idris Rami Bey. This is another point about names and identities. My family name is Kalfani. My title is Bey. So you have my ex-wife, Elisha Madijaneba Akua Kalfani Bey. You have my oldest daughter, Aziza Lulu Kalfani Bey. The next one, Lakeisha Kalfani Bey. Then you have my son, Kyrie Shango Ra Kalfani Bey. And my youngest daughter, Jamila Shunfa Amira Kalfani Bey. Kalfani is the family name and Bey is the title. This is a basic concept and a principle and a custom that is all over the world. But because we are improperly taught, we're looking everywhere for solutions to the subjugation problem. When in 1913, Prophet Noble Drew Ali gave us all the solutions. So when he held up the Moorish Holy Quran and the 101 questionnaire and told us if we study this, and he gave us everything we need to be a nation, that's what the man meant. He gave us everything. He gave us a constitution to establish our law. He gave us a book of law. He gave us doctrine to give us instruction for how we are supposed to live our lives. Last note on that, the significance of doctrine can be seen in South Carolina Codes 33-31-180, which says if the doctrine of a religious corporation is in conflict with that law, the doctrine takes precedence pursuant to their U.S. Constitution or their state constitution, or both. What does that mean? That means your religious doctrine is a higher level of law than the statutes, codes, ordinance, and corporate public policy of a state of. So why do we keep trying to reference federal law, state statutes? Because our foundation is improper. And that's what we work for at Moorish Holy Islam.
That was good. That's a follow-up question too, King. I'd like you for the answer. The significance of the religious corporation, because Jelani was speaking on it, but that's important to really cover the Religious Corporation Act, the Reformation Act. If you can discuss a little bit and kind of just,
Yeah. So
Float exactly like how you was floating off of.
yeah. So the Religious Corporation Act. So again, Prophet Noble Drew Ali established a civic organization, and he was teaching the Moors civics and government. Then he switched it from a civic organization to a religious corporation, right? There had to have been some reason for him to do that. And what we learned is that under the civic organization, under the structure that he had, he was still having to report to the Secretary of State, right? He still was under the jurisdiction of the state. And the religious corporation being established not as a 501c3, because this another problem is that everybody thinks that religious corporations and stuff that got to do with the temple, everything is connected to a 501c3. Now there are temples out there that are connected to 501c3s, but the Prophet Noble Drew Ali didn't have a 501c3. So why would any religious or any Moorish Temple of America be a 501c3? Because what happens when you do that is you give up your autonomy, right, to the First Amendment, which protects the exercise of religion. This is why, we non-tax obligated. This is why there are certain types of protections as far as property is concerned, as far as legal rights are concerned, as far as jurisdiction is concerned. Everything that the Moors really want to fight for outside of the temple, as far as like jurisdiction and all these freedoms and stuff like that, you can have them, find them, and be protected to the top degree if you come under the temple, under the religious corporation, because of the First Amendment. You know what I mean? So again, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali switched it from the civic organization to a religious corporation for a reason. Moors want to, and again, there's nothing wrong with focusing on civics and government, but again, we're a religious society. We're a religious corporation. This is what we're really trying to get our people to understand. There's nothing wrong with religion. Religion has been given like a bad name, due to certain Moors, to be honest. It's like a lot of Moors out there, elder Moors, that put down religion and talk about religion as if it's a bad thing. And it's like, why would you do that if the Prophet Noble Drew Ali established the religious corporation? Why would you even, it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? But like the National Grant said, it's conspiracy. And conspiracy ain't necessarily direct. It's indirect agents too. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you ain't got to use an agent by proxy because you got the wrong information. You know what I mean? So, but as far as the religious corporation and its actual autonomy, I'm gonna give that to the National Grand Sheikh so he could talk about, the actual jurisdiction that the religious corporation has in relation to the state, the municipality, because we got the same exact power. You know what I'm saying?
And see that's this is where the news media comes in, because the news media's negative propaganda will state that the Moors believe they don't have to obey U.S. law. Well, let's look at U.S. law. We're from the jurisdiction of Connecticut. So the legislation of Connecticut in Connecticut General Statutes 598, it speaks about religious corporations. A lot of people don't understand what religious corporations are. Yes, it is a corporation, but it's a corporation that's religious in nature. Sir, per the definition, a religious corporation is a type of not-for-profit, non-tax obligated, that has a degree of autonomy and is known by other governments as a subnational entity. Now, that word subnational is very, very significant, because a subnational entity is a political division that exists inside of a political division. Let me give you an example. In Columbia, South Carolina, there's a community called Forest Acres. It is a 6-mile radius, 6-block radius that's in Ridgeland County in Columbia. They have their own court. They have their own police department. They have their own fire department. All of the stores in the area are Jewish. You see what I mean? That's a subnational entity because that's a complete governmental entity. that exists inside of another political governmental entity. What we don't understand is that the temple or the Moorish Divine and National Movement is the same exact subnational entity, meaning that it may exist in a city, a town, a municipality, but its establishment is separate from said city, state, town, or municipality. In every entity that's in that municipality, for example, the temple has the same exact departments, or we call them ministries. All right, let's do a quick parallel. On a national level, the Supreme Grand Sheik is supposed to be on the same keel or have a working relationship with the president of the U.S. corporation. They're supposed to be able to at least go into that building and speak to a proxy about Moorish affairs. All right? And not get pushed off like, you Willie Lump Lump. The Grand Sheik for the major temple is supposed to be able to walk into the governor's office and have a dialogue with the staff and the governor. So now subordinate temples are supposed to have a working knowledge with the mayor, a rapport with the mayor. See? Two different governments dealing with each other. That's the way it's supposed to be. All right? And that's what the religious corporation allows us to do. To be a governmental entity, self-governing entity, and be within or in accordance with the laws of the state legislation. See, so that's a lie that the media tells you to make us look like miscreants and lawless people. Well, they have to do that. And, I'll give an example. The movie Robin of Locksley, the guy of Gisborne, the cousin, he says, we got to do something, to make the people fear this Robin of Locksley. Let's call him Robin the Wretched, Locksley the Lethal. See what I mean? That's propaganda. You're putting a bad stigma on somebody that's good. And that's what they've done to the Moorish movement. They used to call our prophet a snake oil salesman, say he eat nails, he's crazy. These things are to keep you from what the truth is. And as I close, think about it. This is 2024. How can the people at large know about Elijah Muhammad and Farrakhan, know about Master Farad Muhammad, know about Daddy Grace and Father Divine, Marcus Garvey, and all these people were either students or contemporaries with Noble Drew Ali, yet in 2024 don't nobody know who Noble Drew Ali is. That's the conspiracy. Exactly. And then another thing. Who was that talking about George Washington today, Sheik? Yeah. They were singing the praise of George Washington, right? And looked at me goofy when I doggone shot it down. Because in 1774, it was George Washington, when he was the chairman of the Continental Congress, that said it is imperative to take the fezzes off the heads of the Moors and the turbans and remove their sandals and take a blood oath. In other words, if you said anything about the Moors or you told these dark-skinned people anything about who they really are, you're agreeing that we can kill you. And he said that if this is done 200 years from now, they won't know who they are, what they are, or where they came from. This is why we go into Africa and getting dual citizenship in Ghana and all of this stuff here and taking 23andMe, even though they keep telling you that all that stuff is for entertainment purposes only. We're taking it as the gospel. And even if they have, you have DNA, there's two people you have to doggone remember. Mansa Musa and Abu Bakr. Mansa Musa was the emperor of Mali. Abu Bakr was his brother. They took hundreds of ships and sailed them across the Atlantic and landed here and settled here. Now, doing quick math in your head, 200 ships and an average of about 30 sailors per each ship.
2,400 ships.
Excuse me, 2,400 ships times 30. Over here, they found them some womanes, and they had families. So, of course, when you take them doggone things, you have a DNA from Benin. You know what I'm saying? From Togo, from Senegal. Those are all the sailors. Those are all of the sailors that was in the fleet, in Abu Bakr's fleet, in Mansa Musa's fleet. And DNA does not die. It stays with you all the time. So we're getting played into thinking that we're immigrants like the European is an immigrant. And that's what we have to understand. So that religious corporation is a mutual legislation that recognizes, or acknowledges the fact that as a religious corporation, you have your own autonomous governmental entity, a nation inside of a nation. Islam.
Just a few things else about the religious aspect. What was I thinking about? So another thing is 42 USC 2000 BB, which is the federal law that protects religious exercise. So you hear Moors a lot of times talk about Article 3 jurisdiction, XYZ. But when it comes to 42 USC, if the government burdens the free exercise of your religion, you have the right to bring that claim against the government, any government entity, whether it be a department, a official, etc. None of that 1986, whatever it was, whatever it is, that stuff they be using.
Title 18.
Title, yeah, that you get if they violate your or burden the free exercise of your religion without a compelling government interest. Now that's the other thing, the compelling government interest. Now this got to do with amalgamating, right? If you got a 501c3, you part of a temple that's a 501c3. The federal government and the state by proxy have a compelling government interest in your temple's business. That's why you got to report every year to the Secretary of State. So if you Moors out there, y'all part of temples, ask your Grand Sheik if y'all report every year to the Secretary of State. And you're going to find out. You know what I'm saying? But so 42 USC is the law that it protects us, and it gives us the right to bring claims against the government under Article 3 jurisdiction. This the same jurisdiction that Moors is trying to get, always arguing about. They go into these state courts, and if you were Moor and you in a state court, you already messed up. But they go into these state courts, and you asking a state judge if he has his declaration of authority of whatever they call it. See, I don't even know the language no more. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? He asking if he's an Article 3 judge. He's not an Article 3 judge. He's a state judge. You asking the wrong question in the wrong venue. That's how they know we out of order. And if you study the religious aspect, you're going to come across 42 USC and see that it gives you the jurisdiction under Article 3. The same thing we've been fighting for, because we public ministers. The second thing that I wanted to touch on real quick is the fact that the religious corporation is a trust. The religious corporation is non-tax obligated. You got everybody right now trying to do these same things, protect themselves legally, right, from the corporate shield or piercing the corporate shield or the corporate veil, right, where you don't have any liability if something happens, XYZ, and anonymity, where you try to become anonymous behind the trust. So you got another trust, you got on top of a trust, and you trying to be anonymous. Then your property, placing your property in trust. You know what I'm saying? The temple serves to protect all those things. It serves as a trust, just like the National Grand was talking about chapter 598 of the Connecticut General Statutes, that deals with the fact that we can hold, manage, convey, buy, sell, mortgage, any kind of property in trust. So the temple is a trust. Everybody trying to find the prophet's trust, the 10, 5905, now, whatever number it is. Everybody trying to find the prophet's trust. It's the temple.
Yes,
Y'all going around your elbow just to get to your thumb. It's, come on, man. So what the Jews have, like the National Grand was saying, they got the same thing in New York. Religious autonomy. They run their own communities, from the businesses to the hospitals to the banks, police, fire department, ambulance, all the services that they need, they provide for themselves. And the New York City government cannot get involved unless they ask them to, or they and their police do sometimes, because if you are not part of this Jewish community and you come into this community and you violate something, we gonna detain you until your police come to get you. That's how we work with them. They don't have jurisdiction over the members unless you're a member that has a compelling government interest with them, meaning you got a state ID, driver's license in your pocket, and some of you Moors is being told by your sheiks to go do that.
Put that free national name on that driver's license.
Put your free national name on your put your Moorish name on your driver's license. You're not supposed to be mixing Christianity and Islam. You can't have a Christian name and a Muslim name.
You can't even get the name on the document
Unless
you get it through the court.
Through their court.
Yeah.
Now you all messed up. Now you got your whole bay, your Moorish title all in the secular system.
They get an adjudicated court order. Some weird stuff.
You know what I mean? So it's like all the benefits that are under the Moorish Science Temple of America, in the true sense, because it's a lot of, you know, propaganda and misinformation and conspiracy out there. And this is one of the reasons why the temples are in the position that they in now and can't do nothing for their members. You know, so.
Pastor the Nash.
Yes, sir.
National Grand Sheik, can you speak about the schism? That takes me right into the schism. You spoke about it a little bit, but the schism in the movement and the conspiracy that comes along with it.
Well, I mean, the schism it's one of those things where, along the same lines as COINTELPRO, you know, people were hired and they still are being hired to come in and administer confusion among the Moors. Just like the Assistant National said, you know, the legislation alone speaks about owning of property. The legislation alone, 52-571B of Connecticut General Statutes, it says that any official of the state or subdivision of the state, let's break that down for clarity. In other words, the governor, lieutenant governor, anybody like that up there, or the mayors, the police departments, the municipal courts, the magistrate courts, etc., cannot burden one's religious beliefs and practices. This is why doctrine is so important. Because if we have our writing in black and white and present it as evidence in the court, they must adhere to that doctrine. But let me tell you what they'll try to do. They will try to search out the name on the birth certificate. Ignore your free national descent name In other words, we're ignoring your religion, committing genocide, see, and peonage and slavery, just so they can usurp jurisdiction, hoping you don't know how to defend your state trust. So can you imagine those Moors who were told by their so-called grand sheik, because the only way you can get a state ID is get your name changed through the court. When you do that, you take Nasir Rahman Bey and make it a corporation, thus in the people's jurisdiction. Now, Penhollow versus Doan's administrator basically says that a corporation can only deal with another corporation. So that means a flesh and blood person can't be dealt with by the corporation. All courts are corporations. So they have to make you a corporation. So the grand sheiks that are in conspiracy, never forget, 2004 or 5, brother called me crying. He had a newborn baby just born. He had been on our calls. And the grand sheik told him he would expel him from the temple if that baby didn't get a birth certificate and a social security number. Now you're talking about isms and schisms. Either out of ignorance or conspiracy, like the prophet said, if you're not careful, your own people will sell you right back into slavery. And that's exactly what's happening. So you can't, we always say chapter, verse, sentence, paragraph for a reason. So that our personal opinions are never involved with this Moorish divine and national movement. If we make a statement, we back it up with scripture. See, that way there should not be any argument. Because if I tell you chapter 47, verse 6, we as a clean and pure nation, descendants of Africa, do not desire to amalgamate, meaning mix or intertwine with other entities. Then I say, or marry into the pale-skinned nations of Europe. That means that those albino races that were sent to the Caucasus Mountains, we don't deal with or follow after their religion. Religion is a type of law. So we're not supposed to obey their laws per our doctrine. Then verse 7 says, we are returning the church and Christianity back to the European. See, because the only people who were ever known as Christians are Europeans. And the church is a society. It's an institution. Christianity is a way of life. So that means we're not supposed to be doing anything that deals with Christianity. Now, I didn't say Morisco, because Morisco is a Moorish Christian. All right. A Moor who has either by force or by their own accord converted to the teachings of Jesus Christ. See? But we were never labeled Christians. So the prophet teaches us that ideology and that type of culture must be given back to them. Thus, these grand sheiks with them isms and schisms and conspiracies, making these people keep the European name and adding hyphen ill or bay. There's no scripture that says that. Then you doggone gonna lie on the oral statements that was created in the 70s, 1970? 40 years after the prophet passed veil? So how could he say, hold on to your slave name? How could he do that? They lie on the prophet. You know, just like a lot of other people who are not necessarily part of the divine and national movement who will use the prophet's name to validate their ideology and their philosophy about what it is to be a Moor. And this is the source of the isms and schisms. You actually have people who watch some YouTube videos and go buy a fez and then start their own movement, start their own following. You know, thus you have people like, respectfully, Rise of the Moors, you know, who, when they were put in the news media, and I'm not going to go into the conspiracy about that because there were too many inconsistencies in his presentation for him to be a bona fide Moor. Respectfully. You know, the way he was jumping all around, he had no steady doctrine. He had no consistent argument for what he was doing. You know, what he did was totally irresponsible. You know, there are better ways to handle that. Pile all your guns in a doggone strong box, you know, in a big old suitcase, and lock it. And dress regular until you get on the site where you're going to do your training exercise. That just makes common sense. Gassing up on the side of the road, that doesn't seem right. That's why the cop investigated. That's why the state trooper investigated it. There's a gas station half a mile down the road. What these cats got a gas tank for? A gas can. And he checked it out. Wait a minute. Why they got rifles on their back? Guns on their waist. See? The news media will film that. But they won't film Moors opening up a soup kitchen. Moors doing good work in the community. They have to paint the Moors in a negative connotation. They have to paint the Moors as villains in order for our own people to run from them, thinking that they're trouble and there's somebody who's going to get you locked up. In order so that our following does not grow. And you have a lot of Moors in the movement that are purposely either squashing or quashing and chasing Moors out of the movement. Every time somebody tries to do something constructive, here come the bandwagon. Here come the naysayers. When Act 4 of the additional laws totally forbids that. That we don't talk bad about any other organization. You know, so that's the source of the schisms. Mm-hmm. May 1st, as I was taught by my grand sheik, 1916, is the establishment of the Moorish Holy Temple of Science of the World. In 1926, at the 6th International Conference, that famous Nationality and Identification card in Spanish, all right, when he went over to Cuba, all right, it says Moorish Holy Temple of Science. The Dingles Ill brothers, Clay Bay and them, all right, they make the statement that when they first came in the movement, everything said Moorish Holy Temple of Science. Then in 1928, the prophet went around and struck all of the charters but 3. Chicago, West Virginia, and Charleston. So that meant that Moorish Holy Temple of Science still lived. So now when the Dingles Ill brothers came into play, and Brother H or Hammond Anderson Ill, they came in and revived Moorish Holy Temple of Science. So now my grand sheik at that time was Adar Bey. And in 2007, he appointed me Grand Sheik Divine Minister of the Moorish Holy Temple of Science. At that time, We had a community of 30 people. And the local municipalities, they waged war on us. They harassed our people and chased them out until there were none left but my family. And they would arrest my son for no reason, the whole 9 yards. Straight religious persecution. So to deal with that, we tried all kind of things and it did not work. So forgive me, I lost my track. So what was the question again?
The history of Moorish Holy.
Okay, so now, because I had a charter for the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, and because I'd also been publicly ordained as a Grand Sheikh Divine Minister in the embryo Moorish Science Temple of America, January 17th, 2007, because we were getting harassed so bad by the local municipality and our leadership didn't have anything, they weren't helping anything. They told me to go meet with these people, but didn't give me instructions on what to say to these people or how to deal with them. The county jurisdiction was fine with it, no problem. A assistant chief of police, Michael Butler, a Negro and a Christian minister, he decided to wage war on us. So it even drove me to start investigating on the redemption manual and UCCs and stuff like that. So out of desperate measures, I went to the Secretary of State and I asked him, hey, could I do a UCC on myself? I said, sir, you can't do a UCC on a human being. I'm arguing back and forth with him, reading that redemption manual. Then finally I asked, look, is there a Moorish Science Temple here? And she looked in the computer, and I remember thinking, wow, it's in the computer? It's on y'all records? So then I says, she says, yeah, there's two. One in Aiken and one in Savannah on the South Carolina side. So I asked them, well, how did they do that? And she gave me the form. I had two of my sheikesses with me. That's when I understand the back of the 101. Prophet Noble Ali was the director, and Millie Ill and Small Bay and the rest of them, they were the trustees. You have to have two or more trustees. So in naming the organization, I said I couldn't do Moorish Science Temple of America because there was so much isms and schisms and conspiracy in that I would spend more time fighting them like the Supreme Grand Sheikh E. Miliel did. I'd be caught up in court. They trying to sue me for Moorish Science Temple activity. So I says, well, I'll go back to Moorish Holy Temple of Science. Thus you have the Moorish Holy Temple of Science of the world, free and sundry because we established in South Carolina, and Moorish Science Temple of America. So that's how our jurisdiction started. And the jurisdiction didn't start to take over or replace what the prophet's work was. We have been doing a lot of investigation, and I never forget a brother out of the Midwest, when we were first talking about these ministries, he was telling me, well, look, man, worst come to worst, man, they'll just find you. You find me for trying to find a solution for our problems? You gonna dig in my pocket because you don't agree with it? So I said, okay, I'll establish a jurisdiction whose mission is to go into the laboratory unencumbered and try to fix this classical mess. So one of the first things we did is we started the Ministry of Land Transport and Navigations, because a large part of our conflict was on the highway, on the roadway. See, very brief. Traffic, vehicle, All these things are commercial activities. Traffic means you hauling somebody else's goods and services and getting paid for it. So how can you have a traffic stop when the only people in the car is you? That's because you are the commodity. You're the corporation as an African American. So that's what makes it a traffic stop instead of a Terry stop. Because the car is registered, that also gives police jurisdiction.
Driver's license.
Driver's license, all that situation. Brother had an apostille on himself, right? He showed the policeman his apostille. And he's sitting there, instead of going on about his business, he's sitting there politicking with him. So while they politicking, at that time, South Carolina had a bright orange strip on the top of their ID. So he talking with them and they stayed looking in his wallet. He said, oh, wait a minute. What's this right here? They found the driver's license and locked him up. See, before that point, they had no jurisdiction. See, sometimes we get cocky. So that's how we did with Moorish Holy. And then we didn't stop with the Ministry of Transportation. And just like Sister National said, with the religious corporation being a trust, the car is in trust to the religious corporation. So that means that that's where it belongs and no one else can take it. To take it would be grand theft auto versus an impoundment. You can only impound property that belongs to you. See? So that's pretty much what Moorish Holy is about. And, we have 12 different ministries dealing with labor and vocation, holistic health, education. See, we couldn't do all this stuff and be up under the Moorish Science Temple of America. There are too many ignorant people. Remember, ignorant means not knowing. Ignorant people who would fight that tooth and nail. And we didn't want any conflict. I hope that answers your question.
Make sure y'all follow us on Instagram at World Moorish Holy. Make sure you click the link in the bio, subscribe to the YouTube channel, join the Facebook group. Just go on the the Instagram page and click the link in the bio and you can access, all the other things that we have. Like I said, we got videos up on YouTube. The Instagram page is a lot of information, a lot of educational information. So, that's all I got. I ain't really got no more.
What he said.